This is just an embarrassment. And the people of Arizona are sick and tired of elections being run like we're in some banana republic. I have very little faith in some of the people that are operating that Maricopa County elections. I think they're incompetent.
Kari Lake is not happy with how the gubernatorial race in Arizona is going. She's the Republican candidate in that race, and it appears that her Democratic opponent, the current Secretary of State of Arizona, Katie Hobbs, has a narrow lead in this election and appears to be poised to win. Although, let's be cautiously optimistic on that. Now, the race is still too close to call, and there are still around 160,000 ballots that need to be counted. But the good news is Katie Hobbs is up by 26,000 votes. Now, most of the votes left to count are, in fact, in Maricopa County, where Lake is not doing well. Lake is losing Maricopa County 52 to 48% so far. There are still some ballots that need to be counted in that county, so I just want to give you some caution on that front. Hobbs also dominated in Pima County over the weekend, and that further offset some of Kari Lake's wins in Maricopa County. Now, you heard Lake begin the widespread voter fraud, framing, just kind of set the tone as she gets closer and closer to outright losing this election. But Trump weighed in on the matter as well, as he does. He says, quote, "I assume everyone is watching Arizona as the great Kari Lake's easy election win is slowly yet systematically being drained away from her and from the American people. This is a very sad thing to watch. Mail-in ballots, long election counts, many day elections, machines that very few people understand, massive counting centers, and more are an American disaster. Our elections have become an unreliable joke, and the whole world is watching." And that, of course, sparked some protests near the Maricopa County area. So many of those protesters showed up, about 100 actually, to be specific, over the weekend. Many in the group of protesters echoed Trump's unfounded claims that he lost the 2020 election due to voter fraud, as they called for the military to intervene in Arizona's election. Some also made baseless claims that the Biden government was targeting Trump supporters, with one unidentified man on a megaphone asking the group to pray for people who are being tortured in cages in DC right now, who were who were right here with us 2 years ago. And of course, he's referring to the Capitol Hill rioters who were later arrested because of the rioting they engaged in. Now, there has been some investigation into some of the issues in Arizona, and there have been some issues. But based on what these investigations have shown, everyone who wanted to vote was able to vote and was able to cast their ballots. I'll give you the details on an analysis that the Washington Post did on that in just a minute. But before I do, I want to turn to Bill Gates, who's the chairman of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. He is a Republican, and in regard to claims of voter fraud or irregularities or anything that would throw the election to Katie Hobbs's position, he wants to dispel the notion that any of that is going on. Let's watch.
I understand that Kari Lake wants us to move quickly, and a lot of people do. But you know what's more important is that this is done accurately. That is the focus. And that, like for all of these mail-in ballots, that those are signature verified. This is very important to me as an elected official, that only eligible people, only eligible votes are counted. I would think that Kari Lake would be interested in that as well. That's something that I ran on the Board of Supervisors. I support ID at the polls, and all those things, they might take a little bit more time, but it ensures that only those eligible people are voting. There are Republicans and Democratic eyes on everything through the process, and I actually know this from personal experience, because before I was elected to the Board of Supervisors, I actually used to be a Republican lawyer who would come down here and observe this. Back in the 2006 race, it was a close congressional race between J.D. Hayworth and Harry Mitchell. I was down here for days after Election Day.
So there you have it. The Maricopa County Board of Supervisors chair, Bill Gates, he is a Republican, and he's saying there's nothing fishy going on. In fact, we're ensuring that everyone who's eligible to vote, who wants to vote, is able to vote. And he talks about the process there. But Kari Lake is nominated, was chosen by Donald Trump to run in this gubernatorial race. It doesn't surprise me that if she loses, and as she's losing right now, she's going to throw around claims of election fraud.
To which I say, of course she is. So the process of putting in all those chips through the 5G network has really added some weight to Bill Gates, but at least his eyesight obviously got better because he doesn't need the glasses anymore. So I just wanted to note that for the record.
No, not that Bill Gates.
Different Bill Gates. Oh, okay, all right. Anyways, on to serious stuff. So Trump listed a bunch of things. Let me just go through them real quick. He said long election counts. Well, I have personal experience with that. I have an excellent personal experience. I ran in an election now 2.5 years ago. They're still counting it. Only 76% of the district reported. Okay, now, does that mean that the fix was in and I'm no way, we don't accept it, we have a mini revolution in the 25th, now 27th district of California?
Maybe.
No, no, it depends on the situation. Now, how much did you lose by? Could you make up the votes? Why is there a long count, etc.? So you can have a terrible, some states are great at counting. Funny enough, I mean, it's deeply ironic after 2000, but Florida is really good at counting, okay?
They really are.
Yeah.
And I mean, so, their results almost right away.
Yeah, and that was true before Ron DeSantis. In fact, his election, the first one where he barely won against Andrew Gillum, was a very well-run election. And I hate to say that because it was Republicans running it, but good on them, great, wonderful. So we're fair and honest about it. It's out of California, it takes forever and ever, and is absurd with the long election counts. But that doesn't mean that they're taking all that time to cheat.
Right.
That's a completely different thing. And like with right wingers, their inability to do nuance is just stunning. So for example, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, how about Hillary Clinton? She was also a sore loser. No, those are two separate things. Hillary Clinton arguably was a sore loser, but she said, oh, the reason I lost is because of XYZ. She didn't say I didn't lose. Trump is not really the president, I'm actually the president, and you should storm the Capitol and try to remove him by force.
Right.
Giant difference. It's not even really, you can't even almost call it nuance, it's such a big difference. But the Republican mind has a difficult time grasping it.
Yeah.
They're like, what, it's the same thing, isn't it? No, it's not at all the same thing. So, and I was against Hillary Clinton and I'm against Donald Trump. So I'm unbiased in that regard. And so now he says machines that are hard to understand. Well,
maybe for you.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Because for Trump, everything's hard to understand. He doesn't, as we're gonna show you later in the show, he doesn't understand anything about the law, the Constitution.
Who knew healthcare would be this complicated?
He literally said that. Everyone knew except you moron. Anyway, and then finally, massive counting centers, he says, is a problem.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what do you want them to be smaller? But then you'd have to have more of them because you have to count the votes no matter what, and there's a lot of votes.
Cenk,
so massive counting centers are a problem because of why? Why would that be a problem? He's just so honestly unintelligent. The fact that people take him seriously is one of the most depressing things about America.
I just think these counting centers might be too big to fail, Cenk. They're just too big to fail. No, I know, he is reeling right now. The Republican Party has turned on him. Some of his closest allies have turned on him. We're gonna talk about Mo Brooks, who ran for Senate and had his endorsement taken away from Trump. Later on, he ended up losing that Senate race. But nonetheless, the party seems to be furious at the fact that they performed so poorly during the midterm elections, especially against a Democratic president who is not popular. Let's just keep it real. So Trump doesn't like being blamed, even though he certainly deserves the blame. And we'll get to more details about all of that in just a bit. But I think it's also important to debunk one of the biggest lies that we're hearing from Kari Lake et al. About how there were issues at some of these polling places. And these polling places tend to be in areas that are heavily Republican. So there's something fishy going on. But fact of the matter is, the polling places that did have some issues are not overwhelmingly Republican areas. And the Washington Post did an analysis on this that I think is telling. So let's talk about that. As they write, the voting locations that experience problems on election day in Maricopa County, home to more than half of Arizona's voters, do not skew overwhelmingly Republican. The finding undercuts claims by some Republicans, most notably Kari Lake, the GOP nominee for governor, and former President Donald Trump, that GOP areas in the county were disproportionately affected by the problems, which involved a mishap with printers. So basically what happened with the printers was they were printing the ballots with ink that was too light to read. So individuals who were impacted by this were told of the problem and they were able to vote and fix the error. Now, starting on election day, printers at 70 of the county's 223 polling sites produced ballots with ink that was too light to be read by vote counting machines, which caused ballots to be rejected. That forced voters to either wait in line, travel to another location, or deposit their ballots in secure boxes that were transferred to downtown Phoenix and counted there. County officials say no one was denied the right to vote. And just to kind of break down the notion that these voting centers were in predominantly Republican parts of Maricopa County, that's not true. The proportion of registered Republicans in affected precincts, about 37%, is virtually the same as the share of registered Republicans across the county, which stands at 35%. In fact, there were actually problems at locations and precincts that skew heavily Democratic.
Of course.
They included 2 elementary schools in East Phoenix and a health center in South Phoenix, all locations where the share of Democrats outnumber Republicans by about 40 percentage points. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, the right is, and Kari Lake and Donald Trump being the biggest problem here, most spectacular examples, they never bother to give you real evidence or facts to back up what they're saying. So for example, I don't think Secretary of State should oversee their own elections. So that means Katie Hobbs in this race should not have overseen the governor's race, in my opinion, okay? Even though she's a Democrat, I think it's a bad idea, okay? Now, I also think it's a bad idea when Republican Secretary of States oversee their own elections, like Brian Kemp in Georgia.
Right, that's right.
So we are pretty much the only show you'll ever find that's fair about that. Well, MSNBC will say, oh, of course, Katie Hobbs should do it, but Brian Kemp shouldn't. Fox News will say the exact opposite, right? So, but then when you talk about why they shouldn't oversee their own elections, then you have to come with evidence as to the problems. So for example, Brian Kemp did voter purges, not this time around, although he did do it this time around too, but pretty spectacularly the first time around when he won a razor-thin victory over Stacey Abrams, and those voter purges probably very, very likely made the difference in his own victory. That's outrageous, right? Whereas with Katie Hobbs, they're just like, well, she's in place and she shouldn't be. And it looks like the Democratic districts were more discriminated against than the Republican districts, as always. So we have no evidence, but we're just gonna yap anyway.
Yeah.
Which is right-wing 101. And then finally that gets to the other point that I wanted to make, which is that when you have the voter purges like that Kemp did, the Democrats justifiably go nuts and go, this is outrageous, right? But nothing ever comes of it. But when you have like the tiniest little issue in a Republican area, oh my God, the toner cartridge was a little low. It didn't actually affect anybody's votes, right?
Right.
But it inconvenienced some Republicans. They're like, oh my God! And it's a federal case, and everybody's like, should we do something? Should we not do something? It all goes all the way up to the ex-president, and it becomes like this national issue. Should we address it? Whereas the voter purges continue unabated. Nobody's ever done anything about it. And those are legitimate voters. Not all of them, but a lot of them are legitimate voters that they're just dumping off the voter rolls, and then when they go to vote, they can't.
Right.
And not a peep about fixing that.
No, you're exactly right about that. And someone had responded to, like over the weekend, we learned that Democrats will continue to control the Senate. Slim majority, as always, but nonetheless, they still have control of the Senate. And there was some commenter on Twitter who was losing his mind about it, claiming that there was widespread voter fraud, of course. And someone responded to him with, I think, the best line that I wish all politicians would keep in mind when they feel the temptation to weigh in on alleged election fraud that they have no proof of. Lose with dignity. Just lose with dignity, Okay, it's ridiculous that we're gonna keep going through this process over and over again as Republicans lose. You know, the other thing that I wanna kind of look into as the dust settles is, you know, a lot of these elections were very close. And I'm wondering how much of an impact people who died from COVID has had on these races. I'm talking about specifically the close races.
That is an excellent point. That's a point we made before the elections, but I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And you're right, it could, guys, we've shown you some evidence before. We'll bring it back for you guys and probably do another story about it at a later time. Where the number of people that died in red states that would not have died if they had the same policies as the blue states. And that number is significant. And so it's in the tens of thousands in some of these states.
It could make all the difference.
That could make all the difference in Arizona. It could make the difference. It might have made the difference in the Nevada Senate seat. It could certainly have made the difference in Georgia. So their policies killed their own voters, and oops, now it might be affecting them.
And the other thing I'll say is, Republicans are their own worst enemy, because I like voting by mail because I don't want to risk waiting till like election day and dealing with a lengthy, I gotta work, right? So if there's a super lengthy line, I don't know, if I don't make it, I don't make it. So I don't risk it, I do my mail-in ballot. Whereas Republican voters are told over and over again that there are all these issues with mail-in ballots. Don't vote by mail, make sure you show up on election day, vote in person. Okay, but that might actually end up discouraging people from voting because, for instance, in California, it was raining on election day, as we we shared with the audience that day. There are some people who don't want to go out to their voting place when it's raining. If there's a long line, they might be deterred by that. So they keep shooting themselves in the foot with these terrible, terrible narratives that again work against them when for some reason they think it's working to their favor.
Last two things. One is, it's not just red states versus blue states. In purple states, the ones that matter the most, Republicans did not get vaccinated at a much higher rate than Democrats, and they wound up dying at a higher percentage. And all these plagues were all started by Trump. So Trump didn't just cost them the election by being so radical and insane that some Republicans and independents didn't want to vote for people that were backing him. But he also cost him the election because of COVID and because of his tirade against mail-in ballots.
Right.
So he was just the perfect storm to totally screw over the Republican Party. But of course, that's not going to stop them from thinking about nominating him again for president. But that's why they're also going to have a giant civil war within the Republican Party to try to stop that, because he's in essence a political suicide bomber.
Listen, if that civil war happens within the Republican Party as opposed to among the American people, I'm here for it. Do you, booze? Do whatever you got to do. Just keep that whole civil war talk outside of the context of the entire country.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, Democrats, as we all know, are not very effective fighters. So if anybody's going to take down Donald Trump, it is likely other Republicans.
Yep.
So that's why we look forward to that in a couple of different ways and to save our democracy.